Amid the vast ocean, steel circles quietly drifting with the waves are not just lifeless structures. Inside them are 2 million marine creatures belonging to the 5 most valuable species on the planet, sustaining a seafood industry worth billions of USD. This is where technology, biology, and the ambition to conquer the seas intersect, opening a new future for global food security. Atlantic salmon. The economic machine. Drifting in the ocean. If in the last century Atlantic salmon was merely a gift of nature to the icy rivers of the north, today it has become an economic machine operated by artificial intelligence, advanced offshore farming techniques, and a global trade network. Amid the cold open seas, where the northern monsoon winds blow relentlessly and white-capped waves crash day and night, hundreds of giant cages like floating fortresses quietly transform small fish into a sustainable source of foreign currency for the nation. Salmon farming is no longer the story of fishermen wading in fog to cast their nets. Now, it is a symbol of the shift from natural fishing to controlled production, from the luck of nature to an industrialized strategy. Each cage contains not only hundreds of thousands of fish, but also data, streams of information on temperature, salinity, current speed, oxygen levels, updated in real time. Every parameter is a link in a tightly controlled chain, ensuring salmon grow evenly, stay healthy, and are ready to meet market demand at the right time and to exact specifications. Behind the drifting of those giant circles lies a national strategy. In Norway, the world's salmon capital, the government and businesses have turned this fish into an export pillar, on par with oil and gas. They do not just sell salmon as a food product, but sell an entire story of quality, pristine environments, and advanced technology. Contracts worth hundreds of millions of USD signed with supermarket chains, high-end restaurants, and frozen food distributors across Europe, Asia, and North America are proof of the appeal of this pink gold beneath the water. But to maintain the leading position, Norway and other salmon-producing countries cannot rely solely on nature's favors. In the context of climate change, warming seas, and the ever-present risk of outbreaks of disease and parasites, technology becomes a vital shield. 360-degree camera systems diving deep into the cages are not just for watching fish swim, but for detecting abnormal signs. A fish swimming slower than usual, or a change in the color of its scales. All are early warning signals. The data is transmitted to onshore control centers where engineers, biologists, and economists work together to analyze, predict, and make decisions. This industry has also redefined the concept of food security at the international level. As the global population rises and natural fish stocks decline, the ability to produce millions of tons of salmon with consistent quality and stable prices becomes a strategic competitive advantage. The cages in the open sea, seemingly far away, have a direct impact on dining tables in Tokyo, New York, Paris, or Singapore. A salmon contract disrupted by technical failure or disease is not just the problem of one company, but can affect the entire food supply chain, even the trade balance between nations. Going beyond raw exports, many corporations have moved deep into the value chain. Salmon is now processed into dozens of products: fresh fillets, smoked salmon, frozen sushi, salmon burgers, pure omega-3 oil. Each segment opens up a market, a marketing story, and a new revenue stream. This is how the Atlantic salmon industry expands its influence, not only as a seafood commodity, but as a global brand. From a political economic perspective, salmon is also a tool of soft diplomacy. Gifts of fresh salmon boxes sent to heads of state or bilateral research collaborations on marine farming have appeared many times in the history of Nordic international relations. This product is both a commodity and a symbol of marine management capability, serving as proof that a nation can transform biological resources into long-term economic political power. Therefore, when looking at the quiet floating steel circles in the sea, we do not just see an aquaculture model. We are witnessing an economic machine operated by data, technology, strategic vision, and global connectivity. Atlantic salmon is not only swimming in icy seawater, but also within the currents of global trade, politics, and technology in the modern world. Bluefin tuna. Warriors of the ocean and the million-dollar gamble. If Atlantic salmon is proof of technology's domestication of the open seas, then bluefin tuna is humanity's greatest challenge, taming a fish born to roam the vast oceans. They do not stay still. They do not accept captivity. And for centuries, humans could only hunt them in the wild. But now, in the 21st century, a new gamble has begun, fattening bluefin tuna to turn the warriors of the ocean into luxury products worth from tens of thousands to millions of dollars each. Unlike salmon, which are hatched and raised for their entire life cycle in artificial environments, the journey of bluefin tuna begins with risky offshore expeditions. Fishermen use traditional techniques or purse seines to catch juvenile fish in the wild, often weighing only a few dozen kilograms, and then bring them to massive circular cages in the sea. These cages span tens of thousands of square meters, as deep as an underwater stadium, and are towed hundreds of nautical miles to farming areas. There, a fattening phase begins, lasting months or even a year, using fresh bait fish, from herring, mackerel to sardines, supplied in massive quantities. Behind the image of silvery bluefin tuna thrashing in the sunlight lies a harsh economic equation. The feed conversion ratio, FCR, is extremely high, sometimes requiring more than 10 kilograms of bait fish to produce 1 kilogram of finished tuna, making the cost of raising each fish staggeringly expensive. Yet, the allure of the market is strong enough for seafood tycoons in Japan, Spain, Malta, or Mexico to pursue this model. At auctions in Tsukiji or Toyosu fish markets, Tokyo, a fully grown bluefin tuna can fetch several $100,000 USD, and exceptionally, star specimens over 200 kilograms have reached the record price of $1.8 million US. The appeal of bluefin tuna lies not only in its economic value, but also in its cultural status. In Japan, this species is the soul of high-end sushi, a symbol of freshness and prestige. A slice of sashimi from the fatty belly cut, otoro, of a bluefin tuna is considered a symphony of sweetness, richness, and ocean aroma, something no other fish can replace. That is why securing a steady supply of bluefin tuna is not merely a matter of trade, but a strategic issue for the global culinary industry. However, to achieve that goal, humans must face tough questions. Bluefin tuna still cannot reproduce reliably in captivity, making fry supply entirely dependent on wild catches. This puts the farming industry in a double-edged sword situation, developing the economy while risking further depletion of an already overfished wild population. Conservation organizations continually warn about the biological limits of this species, while governments and businesses strive to find a balance between profit and sustainability. Technology has begun to enter this field, but the road ahead is long. Some research institutes in Japan and the Mediterranean have successfully tested spawning in controlled environments, but costs remain too high, and the survival rate of fry is still low. If this technology is perfected, it would mark a turning point, reducing pressure on wild populations while stabilizing supply and prices. At that point, bluefin tuna farming could emerge from the shadow of controversy to become a symbol of sustainable mariculture, much like salmon has achieved. For now, however, Bluefin tuna remains a game for big players with deep pockets, willing to accept huge risks in exchange for massive profits. Each harvest season is a gamble. Fish quality, stock health, timing of sales, and market fluctuations can all cause the value of a farming run to soar or crash. The entrepreneurs and fishermen in this game are like investors on a stock exchange, except instead of trading shares, they trade the ocean's shimmering warriors. And just like in financial markets, there is no room for complacency here. A small change in water temperature, an unexpected storm, or a disease outbreak can wipe out millions of USD in just a few days. That is why, behind the glitter of million-dollar auctions, bluefin tuna farming is an industry where every decision is carefully weighed, where technology, experience, and sheer grit are tested to their limits. Bluefin tuna, with all its wildness and value, still holds the title of Warrior of the Ocean. But now, these warriors have become the central figures in a new battle. The battle between profit and sustainability, between the desire to conquer nature and the responsibility to preserve it for future generations. Ocean lobster, a luxury icon and the race for control. If salmon is the story of taming nature and bluefin tuna is the battle of technology and market, then lobster carries the air of a luxury dynasty, where value lies not only in delicious meat, but also in power, geopolitics, and transcontinental economic calculations. This crustacean, with its armor-like shell and massive claws, has long surpassed the concept of a dish, becoming a symbol of class, prosperity, and even of hidden political bargaining. Ocean lobsters, especially Canadian lobster and Maine lobster, USA, were once market fare in the 19th century, food for the poor, even used as prison rations. But in just a few decades, thanks to shifting tastes and clever marketing strategies, lobsters ascended to the throne of Western cuisine. Today, lavish banquets in New York, Paris, or Hong Kong consider lobster the centerpiece of the menu, and a live lobster weighing 1.5 kilograms can be sold for dozens of times its nutritional value. But behind the glamorous lights of restaurants, the lobster industry is a complex economic political network. Every year, hundreds of thousands of tons of lobster are caught, kept alive, and then flown to distant markets. This is not only a sophisticated cold supply chain, but also an economic lifeline for many coastal communities. In Maine, thousands of families depend entirely on the lobster season for income, and the small harbors of New England suddenly become trade hotspots whenever lobster boats dock. Lobster is also a clear example of how global trade can shape the fate of an industry. When demand in China boomed in the early 2010s, U.S. lobster prices skyrocketed. Exporters quickly established direct air routes from Boston and Halifax to Beijing and Shanghai, making it possible for lobsters pulled from traps in the morning to be served at banquets in Asia by evening. But this link is also full of risks. Just one trade tension, as when the U.S. and China imposed retaliatory tariffs in 2018, sent the American lobster industry reeling. Thousands of tons of products were forced to reroute through Europe or be dumped on the domestic market, causing prices to plummet. What sets lobster apart from many other seafood species is its seasonality and environmental dependence. They require cold waters, rocky seabeds with crevices for shelter, and are especially sensitive to temperature. Climate change is threatening to shift lobster populations northward, forcing fishermen in Massachusetts and Rhode Island to face declining catches, while Canadian waters benefit. This shift is not just an ecological issue, but also a political one, as fishing rights and quotas become contested between states, provinces, and even between white fishermen and the Mi'kmaq indigenous community, who have legally recognized traditional fishing rights. And in a fierce market, lobster is sold not only as food, but also as a national brand. Maine lobster has become a protected trademark, appearing on menus as a promise of quality. Canada counters with Canadian lobster and a global marketing campaign. Behind these seemingly simple names lies an entire strategy of promotion, investment in live storage, quality control, and building consumer trust. The future of the lobster industry depends on its ability to maintain yields while adapting to environmental and political changes. Some companies are experimenting with raising lobsters in land-based cold water recirculating systems, something once thought impossible. If successful, it could reduce pressure on wild harvests, extend the supply season year-round, and expand production to regions without cold seas. However, investment and operating costs remain major barriers, and consumers are still unaccustomed to the idea of farmed lobster. Lobster, therefore, remains the proud monarch of the ocean, both vulnerable to change and powerful on the dining table and in trade negotiations. Each lobster embodies not only the flavor of the sea, but also the story of globalization, of communities living by the ocean, and of the fragility of a luxury icon before the storms of the world's economic-political tides. Majestic king crab. Ambition. Across the oceans. If lobsters are the proud aristocrats and tuna the speed warriors, then the king crab is like a battle-hardened general, clad in a massive spiked armor, commanding with authority over the coldest seas on the planet. Not only is it one of the most expensive seafood species, but king crab is also the focal point of hidden struggles between nations, where maritime boundaries, economic interests, and political power intertwine in complex ways. Red, blue, or golden king crabs, especially from the Bering Sea, Alaska, or Russia, are not merely a dish. They are a symbol of generosity, of the immense bounty that nature grants to those strong enough to conquer it. King crab fishing is not for the faint of heart. Fishermen must face waves as high as walls, decks coated with thick ice, and winds so fierce they can topple a shipping container on the vessel's deck. Every voyage is a life-or-death gamble, but the reward is massive crabs weighing over 10 kilograms, each kilogram fetching hundreds of USD at high-end restaurants in Tokyo, Seoul, or Dubai. However, behind this dazzling image lies a fierce geopolitical game. The Bering Sea and the Sea of Okhotsk, where king crabs thrive, sit along strategic shipping routes and overlapping exclusive economic zones of the US and Russia. A small change in a fishing agreement can cause thousands of tons of crabs to vanish from one nation's hands and fall into another's nets. More than once, fishing vessels from both sides have accused each other of trespassing, leading to intense chases amid rough seas. The king crab consumer market only heightens the tension. Japan and South Korea used to be the largest buyers, but in recent years, China has emerged as a new super consumer, willing to pay premium prices to secure supply. This has fueled fierce price competition, funneling supply in one direction and putting traditional importers in a difficult position. A unique aspect of the king crab industry is the closed nature of its harvesting chain. Each fishing season lasts only a few months, and catches are strictly regulated to protect the population. As a result, fishing quotas become pure gold in the hands of licensed companies. Many businesses are willing to spend millions of USD just to buy the fishing rights from a retired fisherman. And like any scarce resource, ownership rights are a constant spark for disputes, lawsuits, and even bribery to gain an advantage. On another front, climate change is quietly reshaping the king crab map. Warmer seas are pushing the population farther north, even into areas that have never been fished before. This presents both opportunities and challenges. Nations must renegotiate fishing zones, while fishermen need to invest in larger vessels and bear higher costs to keep up with the migrating crabs. The future of the king crab industry, therefore, depends on a delicate balance between exploitation and conservation, between international cooperation and fierce competition. The giant crabs with their spiny claws will continue to cross oceans to appear on lavish dining tables, but the story behind them, of daring voyages, political maneuvering, and power plays, will remain as captivating as the sweet, tender meat freshly pulled from their shells. Lobster. A luxurious dance in the ocean. If the king crab is the cold-blooded general of the icy seas, then the lobster carries the elegance of an aristocratic dancer, gliding gracefully among rocky reefs and seaweed beds, yet holding an economic power no less fierce. From the eastern seaboard of the United States and Canada to the offshore reefs of Africa or Australia, the lobster is not only a luxurious delicacy but also a hard currency of the global seafood industry. The culinary world hails lobster as a masterpiece. Its flavor is both sweet and rich, with each firm strand of meat hidden beneath a hard shell, crafted by chefs into dozens of variations. Steamed, grilled with garlic butter, cooked into creamy bisque. In upscale restaurants in New York, Paris, or Shanghai, lobster is not just food, it is a statement of elegance. And it is precisely this need to show status that has driven lobster prices to levels forcing the entire seafood industry to rethink its strategies. But to obtain a fresh lobster, the story begins with small fishing boats clinging to harsh seas. Lobster season in Maine, USA, is nothing short of a military campaign. Thousands of traps are dropped to the seabed, each marked with a small flag denoting ownership. Fishermen must contend not only with waves and winds, but also with the silent war between those fishing the same area, where a cut rope or a missing trap could signal a clash of interests. Lobster is also a clear example of how the market can shape local politics. In many coastal states of the U.S., lobster is the main livelihood, making up the bulk of community income. Whenever lobster prices fluctuate, due to shifting demand in China, a temporary export ban, or disease outbreaks, the entire local economy shakes. This forces politicians in Maine, Massachusetts, or Nova Scotia, Canada, to pay special attention, for one wrong policy could cost them thousands of votes from the fishing community. But beyond domestic matters, lobster is also a link in the chain of international trade relations. In 2018, when the U.S. and China entered a trade war, American lobster suddenly faced high tariffs in China, opening the door for Canada to take the market share. American fishermen fell into an oversupply crisis, with domestic prices plummeting, while thousands of tons of Canadian lobster sailed smoothly into Guangzhou at handsome prices. Just a few trade clauses were enough to shift the entire flow of the industry. Behind the bright lights of restaurants, the lobster industry also faces a long-term challenge: climate change. Warming seas are causing lobster populations to migrate gradually northward, crossing the invisible border between the U.S. and Canada. This not only alters the yields of each region, but also heats up negotiations over resource sharing. Lobster, therefore, is not merely the food of the wealthy, but also a mirror reflecting how the world operates, from five-star hotel dining tables to small wooden boats in the misty morning, from dry trade negotiations to roaring offshore waves. And, perhaps, it is precisely the blend of luxurious beauty, economic value, and power struggles that has made lobster a central character in the turbulent symphony of the sea. Scallops. The white pearls of the deep sea. If lobsters are considered the aristocrats of the ocean, then scallops embody pure and delicate beauty, like a white pearl hidden deep inside a rough shell. Not as noisy as tuna or as flashy as king crabs, scallops quietly win over culinary connoisseurs with their mild sweetness, subtle aroma of the sea, and tender yet firm texture. But behind that gentleness lies a multi-billion-dollar industry, driven by the sharp calculations of farmers, traders, and politicians. In Japan, France, the United States, or Australia, scallops are not only an ingredient for exquisite dishes such as sashimi, carpaccio, or scallops seared with garlic butter. They are also a symbol of refinement, a benchmark for evaluating a chef's skill. In international culinary competitions, just one overseer can be enough to make a dish lose points. Therefore, scallops are both a gift from the sea and an artistic challenge. The scallop value chain begins in cold seas, where clean, mineral-rich waters allow them to grow slowly and accumulate rich flavor. Unlike many types of wild-caught seafood, scallops today mostly come from carefully planned marine farms. Each floating raft holds hundreds of mesh baskets containing juvenile scallops suspended in mid-water, avoiding natural predators while benefiting from nutrient-rich currents. What's special is that the scallop farming industry has become a strategic economic political model. In Japan, the Hokkaido region treats scallops as an ecological bank, creating jobs while protecting the marine environment. In the U.S., the states of Massachusetts and Alaska use scallop harvesting permits as a tool for economic regulation. Quotas are issued not only for conservation, but also to keep prices stable in the market. A misguided policy could cause production to surge unexpectedly, prices to collapse, and hundreds of fishermen to struggle. The international scallop market is no less fierce. China, a massive consumer market, is willing to buy live scallops at high prices, prompting many Western exporters to prioritize sales there over domestic markets. But this dependence means that just one trade barrier or change in import policy can shake the entire industry. In fact, in 2020, when China restricted seafood imports from certain countries citing food safety reasons, thousands of tons of scallops had to find alternative buyers, causing prices to drop nearly 40% in just a few months. Scallops are also a hot spot in territorial disputes. Many scallop-rich waters lie within overlapping national boundaries, leading to simmering conflicts between fishing vessels. The 2018 Scallop War between the UK and France was proof. Dozens of boats from both nations chased each other, threw rocks, and cut nets, all over rights to fish in a small but resource-rich area. But perhaps the greatest challenges are climate change and marine pollution. Scallops are highly sensitive to changes in water temperature and pH. Ocean acidification threatens their shell formation, while microplastic waste can accumulate in their bodies, raising concerns for both human health and brand reputation. Many countries are investing in seawater filtration technology and seaweed farming to balance ecosystems, not only to protect scallops, but also to safeguard a strategic economic sector. Scallops, therefore, are not merely a culinary ingredient. They are the story of how humans strive to preserve the delicacy of the sea in an era of globalized economics and climate change. Inside that humble shell lies economic value, trade power, and tough tests for the coordination abilities of coastal nations. And just as a pearl must endure years of shaping, scallops are navigating their own highs and lows to continue shining, both on the dining table and on the global economic chessboard. Black tiger shrimp, the silent warrior in the global seafood market. If scallops represent the delicacy of the open sea, then black tiger shrimp embody the strength of a warrior, resilient and steadfast in the face of fierce market waves. With their sturdy shells, striking colors, and rich flavor, black tiger shrimp have become a symbol of prosperity in the cuisine of many Asian countries, as well as one of the key export products for many coastal economies. Yet behind those frozen trays of black tiger shrimp in supermarket freezers lies an entire journey soaked in sweat, full of strategy, and not without political and economic upheaval. Black tiger shrimp are primarily native to tropical and subtropical regions, especially thriving in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and East Africa. Unlike many types of wild-caught seafood, black tiger shrimp have become a strategic weapon in the aquaculture industry. In Vietnam, Thailand, and India, coastal lands that once grew rice or lay abandoned have been transformed into shrimp farms spanning tens, even hundreds of hectares. Every square meter of water surface is a production unit capable of generating foreign currency. However, for black tiger shrimp to meet export standards, farmers must follow a strict process, from selecting healthy broodstock, managing water quality, feeding at the right times, to controlling diseases. An outbreak of white spot disease or acute hepatopancreatic necrosis can wipe out an entire crop, causing billions of dong in losses. This is why shrimp-producing countries rely not only on traditional experience, but also invest heavily in technology, from paddle wheel aerator systems, pond surveillance cameras, to mobile laboratory testing facilities. In the marketplace, black tiger shrimp are part of a fierce arena between major exporting countries. The U.S., European, and Japanese markets demand products that meet stringent antibiotic regulations and have clear traceability. Meanwhile, the Chinese market, though less strict, fluctuates greatly based on border trade policies and quarantine measures. A single tightening of import controls can leave thousands of shrimp containers stuck at border gates, causing millions of US dollars in daily losses. But the game extends beyond exports. On a macro level, black tiger shrimp have become a bargaining chip in trade negotiations. The U.S. once imposed anti-dumping duties on black tiger shrimp from several Southeast Asian countries, pushing many companies into bankruptcy and forcing them to seek new markets such as the Middle East, Russia, or South America. Meanwhile, the European Union's yellow card against nations accused of illegal fishing had a ripple effect on the shrimp industry, damaging national reputations. Black tiger shrimp also exemplify the intersection of economic interests and environmental concerns. The rapid expansion of shrimp farming once destroyed large swaths of mangrove ecosystems, causing coastal erosion and loss of biodiversity. International pressure has pushed governments to encourage mangrove-integrated shrimp farming models, maintaining production while protecting the environment. Many farms now hold international certifications such as ASC, Aquaculture Stewardship Council, opening new competitive advantages in premium markets. In the culinary world, black tiger shrimp hold a special place. From upscale restaurants in Tokyo and Paris to seaside seafood stalls in Da Nang or Bangkok, black tiger shrimp are always a star on the menu. They can appear as fresh sashimi, grilled whole, stir-fried with salt, steamed with beer, or sautéed with garlic butter, each dish highlighting the shrimp's sweetness and crunch. This enduring appeal secures black tiger shrimp a stable position in many countries' import lists, despite economic fluctuations. From a broader perspective, black tiger shrimp are not merely a seafood commodity, but also proof of the economic transformation potential of coastal nations. From poor fishing villages, shrimp farming has created millions of jobs, brought in massive foreign exchange earnings, and elevated national standing on the global trade map. At the same time, it raises the challenge of balancing profit, sustainability, and political power, a puzzle not every nation can solve perfectly. For this reason, black tiger shrimp remain a silent warrior, contributing daily to the flow of the global economy. And just like the ocean waves that never sleep, the competition surrounding this shrimp will continue, from the ponds to the international negotiating tables.